It was a Tuesday morning, August 22nd, 1911. The Louvre Museum in Paris was waking up. It was a hot summer day. The guards were hungover. The cleaners were sweeping the floors. A painter named Louis Barou walked into the Salon Carré. He had come to paint a sketch of the museum's interior. He set up his easel. He mixed his paints. He looked up at the wall between two other Renaissance masterpieces. He blinked. He looked again. There was nothing there, just 4 empty iron hooks sticking out of the wall, and a rectangular dust stain where a painting used to be. He didn't panic. Not yet. He assumed the museum photographers had taken the painting to the roof to photograph it in the sunlight. It happened all the time. He asked a guard, "Where is she?" The guard shrugged. "At the photographers, I assume." Hours passed. The sun climbed higher. Barou got impatient. He sent the guard to go check with the photographer. The guard walked to the studio. "Do you have the Da Vinci?" he asked. The photographer looked at him, confused. "No, we haven't taken anything today." The guard ran back. He ran to the director of the museum. "She's gone," he gasped. "The Mona Lisa is gone." Panic. Absolute chaos. The doors of the Louvre were slammed shut. The police were called. The borders of France were closed. Every ship leaving the country was searched. It was unthinkable. You don't just walk out of the biggest museum in the world with a wooden panel under your arm. You don't just steal a Leonardo da Vinci. The police assumed it was a professional gang, a sophisticated international syndicate, maybe even the Germans trying to humiliate France. They were wrong. It wasn't a gang. It wasn't a spy. It was a poor, short Italian handyman with a mustache who simply walked in, took the painting off the wall, and walked out. He kept the most famous woman in the world hidden in a trunk in his dirty apartment for 2 years. He slept on top of her. He ate his pasta next to her. This is the incredible true story of Vincenzo Peruggia, the man who stole the Mona Lisa. To understand the theft, you have to understand the painting, or rather, what the painting wasn't. In 1911, the Mona Lisa was not the icon she is today. If you walked into the Louvre in 1910, you wouldn't see a crowd of 500 tourists holding up iPhones. You wouldn't see bulletproof glass. You wouldn't see armed guards. She was just a painting. A very good painting, yes. A Da Vinci, yes. But she wasn't the star. She hung on a wall crowded with other paintings. She was small, dark, underwhelming. People didn't line up to see her. But the Louvre itself was a fortress of art. It was the pride of France. And in 1911, it was also a security nightmare. The museum was massive. It had over 1,000 rooms. But it had fewer than 150 guards. And those guards were not exactly elite soldiers. They were old men. They were underpaid. They often fell asleep on chairs or left their posts to smoke cigarettes in the courtyard. It was said that you could live in the Louvre for a week and no one would notice. Enter Vincenzo Peruggia. Vincenzo was 29 years old. He was an immigrant from Dimenza, Italy. He had moved to Paris to find work like thousands of other Italians. He was a glazier, a man who cuts and fits glass. He was a talented worker, but he was angry. In Paris, in the early 20th century, Italians were treated like second-class citizens. They were called macaroni. They were spat on. They were paid less than the French. Vincenzo was bullied constantly by his French co-workers. They mocked his accent. They mocked his food. They mocked his height. He was only 5'3". He developed a deep, burning hatred for the French, and he developed a theory that would drive him to commit the crime of the century. He believed that France was a nation of thieves. He read history books, or at least he skimmed them. He read about Napoleon Bonaparte. He read about how Napoleon had marched his armies into Italy and looted the country. He stole statues, gold, and paintings, and brought them back to Paris as trophies. Vincenzo looked at the Louvre, and he didn't see a museum. He saw a warehouse of stolen Italian property, and in his mind, the Mona Lisa was the ultimate symbol of that theft. He believed Napoleon had stolen her. He was wrong, by the way. Leonardo da Vinci had actually brought the painting to France himself and sold it to the King of France legally. But Vincenzo didn't have Google. He had rage. He decided he was going to be a hero. He was going to take her back home. Vincenzo had an advantage that no other thief had. He had a uniform. A few months before the theft, the Louvre had decided to put glass cases over their most valuable paintings to protect them from vandals. They hired a private company to cut the glass. Vincenzo Peruggia was one of the men they hired. For months, he worked inside the museum. He learned the layout. He learned the shortcuts. He learned the guard schedules. He knew exactly when they took their breaks. He knew which doors were locked and which ones were broken. He even helped build the glass case for the Mona Lisa itself. He touched the painting. He held it. He knew exactly how it was hooked to the wall. He knew that the painting wasn't painted on canvas. It was painted on a heavy poplar wood panel. It weighed about 18 pounds. It was heavy, but it was small enough to carry. He set the date. Monday, August 21st, 1911. The Louvre was always closed on Mondays for cleaning and maintenance. This was the perfect time. On Sunday evening, Vincenzo went out for a drink with his friends. He told them he had a big job the next day. He didn't finish his wine. He went home early. He couldn't sleep. He paced around his tiny apartment. He checked his pockets. He had a white smock, the uniform worn by museum maintenance workers. If he wore the smock, he was invisible. Just another worker. Just another macaroni fixing a window. At 7:00 a.m. on Monday morning, he walked to the Louvre. He entered through the workers' entrance. The guard didn't even look up. He was in. Vincenzo knew he had to hide. The museum was closed to the public, but there were cleaners and other workmen roaming around. He found a small storage closet near the Salon Carré. It was filled with art supplies and easels. He slipped inside and closed the door. He waited. He waited for the sound of the heavy footsteps of the night watchman leaving. He waited for the silence to settle. Around 8:00 a.m., he stepped out of the closet. He put on his white smock. The Salon Carré was empty. The guard who was supposed to be watching the room had left to get a bucket of water to clean the floor. Vincenzo walked straight up to the Mona Lisa. He didn't hesitate. He didn't admire the art. He reached up, grabbed the heavy frame and lifted it off the 4 iron hooks. It was heavy. He staggered slightly. He carried the painting into a narrow service staircase nearby. It was a staircase used only by staff. He was alone. He needed to get the painting out of the frame. The frame was huge and gilded. He couldn't walk down the street with it. He took out a tool. He unscrewed the wooden panel from the frame and the glass case. He worked fast. His hands were shaking. He stripped her naked. Just the wood panel. He left the heavy frame and the glass on the staircase floor. Now he had a problem. The painting was still too big to hide under his coat. It was 30 inches tall. He took off his white smock and wrapped it around the painting. He tucked it under his arm like a student carrying a portfolio. He walked down the stairs to the exit door. He turned the handle. It was locked. Vincenzo panicked. He was trapped. He had the stolen masterpiece under his arm, and the door wouldn't open. He took out a screwdriver and tried to disassemble the doorknob. Suddenly, he heard footsteps on the stairs above him. Someone was coming down. Vincenzo froze. He hid the screwdriver. It was a plumber, a museum employee named Sauvé. The plumber looked at Vincenzo. He looked at the door. "Is it locked?" the plumber asked. "Yes," Vincenzo said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I can't get it open." "Here, let me help you," the plumber said. The plumber, the man who could have saved the Mona Lisa, the man who could have been a national hero, pulled out a pair of pliers and opened the door for the thief. "Merci," Vincenzo said. He walked out into a courtyard. But there was one more gate. The guard at the gate was supposed to check everyone leaving. But fate was on Vincenzo's side. The guard was away from his post, cleaning the vestibule. Vincenzo Peruggia walked out of the Louvre into the bright Paris sunlight with the Mona Lisa under his arm. He hailed a cab, but the painting was too big. He couldn't fit it comfortably. He waved the cab away. He walked 2 miles back to his apartment. He was sweating. He was terrified. He got home, threw the painting onto his table, and collapsed. He had done it. When the news broke on Tuesday, Paris went insane. The police prefect, Louis Lépine, was humiliated. He ordered the arrest of everyone. The police used a new technique called fingerprinting. They found a clear thumbprint on the glass case that Vincenzo had left in the stairwell. They fingerprinted every employee in the museum. They fingerprinted 257 people. But they didn't catch Vincenzo. Why? Because the police were incompetent. Vincenzo had been fingerprinted before. He had a police record for a minor robbery years earlier. His prints were in the system, but the police files were categorized by right-hand prints. The print on the glass was from a left hand, so they never made the match. The police were desperate. They started arresting crazy suspects. They arrested the famous poet Guillaume Apollinaire. They suspected the painter Pablo Picasso. Picasso was terrified. He actually did have some stolen statues from the Louvre in his apartment, which he had bought from a shady dealer. But he had nothing to do with the Mona Lisa. He was dragged into court, weeping, denying everything. Meanwhile, the Louvre reopened a week later, and something strange happened. Thousands of people lined up. They didn't line up to see the other art. They lined up to see the empty space. They stared at the blank wall where the Mona Lisa used to be. People cried. They left flowers. It became a sensation. Newspapers around the world printed the image of the Mona Lisa on their front pages. "Have you seen this woman?" Before the theft, only art critics knew her face. Now farmers in Ohio and fishermen in Japan knew her face. Vincenzo Peruggia had accidentally launched the biggest marketing campaign in history. He made her a superstar. For 2 years, the painting lived in a trunk. Vincenzo's apartment was a dump. It was tiny. It smelled of turpentine and old food. He built a false bottom in a wooden trunk. He wrapped the Mona Lisa in red velvet and placed her there. He lived his life. He went to work. He dated a girl. He drank wine. All while the most hunted object on earth was 3 feet away from him. Sometimes, late at night, he would take her out. He would set her on the table. He would stare at her. He later said in court, "I fell in love with her. I felt like she was watching me." He became paranoid. He thought his friends were spies. He thought his landlady was looking through his keyhole. He tried to sell it. He contacted art dealers in London and New York using a fake name. But he realized it was too hot. No one would touch it. He was a millionaire on paper, but he was starving in reality. Finally, in December 1913, 2 years after the theft, he couldn't take it anymore. He wanted to go home. He packed his clothes. He packed the painting. He took a train to Florence, Italy. He checked into a cheap hotel. The Hotel Tripoli Italia. He wrote a letter to an art dealer in Florence named Alfredo Geri. The letter was signed Leonardo. It said, "The stolen work of Leonardo da Vinci is in my possession. It seems to me that it belongs to Italy, since its painter was an Italian." Geri thought it was a prank. He got hundreds of letters from crazy people claiming to have the Mona Lisa, but he agreed to meet Leonardo at his hotel room. He brought along the director of the Uffizi Gallery, Giovanni Poggi. They walked into room 20. Vincenzo was waiting. He looked disheveled. He pulled the trunk out from under the bed. He threw aside some old socks, some woolen underwear, and a pair of pliers. And there she was. The director of the Uffizi gasped. He looked at the back of the panel. He saw the official Louvre inventory stamps. He saw the crack in the wood that only the curators knew about. It was real. They told Vincenzo, "We need to take this to the gallery to verify it." Vincenzo let them take it. He thought he had won. He thought he was about to get a reward. He thought Italy would throw him a parade. Instead, an hour later there was a knock at the door. It wasn't a parade. It was the Carabinieri, the police. Vincenzo didn't fight. He just said, "It is a shame. I only wanted to return her to her fatherland." The trial of Vincenzo Peruggia was a circus. In France, they wanted him guillotined. They saw him as a criminal who stole their national treasure. But in Italy, he was a folk hero. The Italian public loved him. They saw him as a patriot, a simple man who stood up to the big, arrogant French Empire. People sent him wine in prison. Women sent him love letters. They called him the gentleman thief. Vincenzo played the part perfectly. He cried in court. He talked about his love for Italy. He talked about how the French had insulted him. The judge was lenient. Vincenzo Peruggia was sentenced to 1 year and 15 days in prison. That's it. He served only 7 months before he was released. He returned to the hotel where he was arrested, which changed its name to the Hotel La Gioconda, the Mona Lisa Hotel, and signed autographs. But what about the painting? The Mona Lisa was displayed in Italy for a few weeks. Millions of Italians came to see her. It was a national party, and then she was returned to France. She traveled in a private train car with armed guards and a diplomatic escort. When she arrived back at the Louvre, she was no longer just a painting. She was a celebrity. Before the theft, the Louvre had maybe one guard in that room. After the theft, she was placed in her own spot, eventually moving behind bulletproof glass, surrounded by alarms. The theft gave her a story. It gave her mystery. It made people ask, why is she so special? And the answer is, she is special because she was stolen. Vincenzo Peruggia eventually moved back to France. He changed his name to Pietro. He got married, had a daughter, and opened a paint shop. He died in 1925 on his 44th birthday. He never got rich. He never got a medal. But he achieved something that no artist, no critic, and no king ever could. He took a piece of wood and paint, and he turned it into the most famous image in human history. Every time you see a crowd of tourists fighting to take a selfie with the Mona Lisa, remember, they aren't just looking at Da Vinci's brushstrokes. They are looking at Vincenzo Peruggia's crime scene. Thanks for watching Silt. If you enjoyed this story of art, crime, and unintended consequences, hit the like button and subscribe. See you in the next one.